First time I went diving was in probably 1966. I was at a youth camp and they had scuba bottles there, and so myself and another friend of mine, we happened to take the scuba bottles, went diving, and been diving ever since. After high school, I joined the Navy in 1967. I wanted to become a Navy diver, but at the time, you had to get your trade done first. My trade was naval air or air bosun. Worked on the flight deck of the Bonaventure, which was our aircraft carrier at the time. Worked as a aircraft handler and firefighter and ship's diver. We had some pretty good experiences with the Navy. Every time we went into a foreign port, we would end up diving, checking the bottom, checking the ships for limpet mines or any type of stuff. So we had quite a few experiences with the Navy. And I worked for about 3 years at that. Then the oil field was starting to kick off. They built some oil rigs in Halifax, and I said, well, I want to come out and dive in the oil rigs. Big money. And that's what I ended up doing. Came out to BC from Halifax and approached Phil Newton with Can Dive. And he said, well, you need to get some diving experience. But I said, I was a Navy diver. But no, you need some diving experience. So he suggested I go to school. There was a school in Vancouver called Northwest School of Deep Sea Diving. So I worked for them. Finished, it was about a 3-month course, I guess it was. Then finished with them and arrived in Newfoundland, and we went to work there in St. John's, Newfoundland. Can Dive had 3 rigs going at the time, and I was so lucky that I ended up on all 3 of them at one time with another. I worked there for 3 years, then the rigs left. So they asked me if I wanted to go overseas. I said, sure. Then I continued diving in Trinidad, and we went to Brazil after that, and we started saturation diving down there. And I was running saturation, and saturation diving is a means of when your body becomes saturated with things, instead of coming back to the surface, you're staying at depth, the same depth that you're working at. Then you're gradually taken back to the surface, which could be 5, 10, 15 days, whatever. So your body is super saturated with the nitrogen. Well, you're living in a usually 400 cubic foot chamber. It's approximately 11 feet long by maybe 7 feet high. You're living in there with different people. Now the new saturation systems they got 10, 12-man chambers with 12 people in. When we first started off with saturation, there was only 2 people that are living in these close confined spaces. Then from saturation, I went into ADS, atmosphere diving suits. We had a Gem and a Wasp, which are one of the first 2 ADS suits, atmosphere diving suits that we had. I was on the Penrod 72. Worked for a couple years doing that, and in 1980, Can Dive asked me if I'd come back and work in Canada, and I was away for about 8 years out of Canada. I said, sure, I'll come back, and I came back and I worked up in the Arctic in the Beaufort Sea with Can Dive, and then in 1983 I got lucky and we were on an expedition with Dr. Joe McGinnis on the Breadalbane, which was one of the ships that was looking for Franklin. When Franklin got lost in the 1840s, his wife was sending ships out and looking for him, and they went to Beechy Island. And it was the summer of 1853, and ice came in, crushed the ship, and the ship just went straight down. And Dr. Joe McGinnis led an expedition for it, and we ended up diving with the Wasp, which was again a 1-atmosphere diving suit. I was the operator of the suit, of the Wasp suit. Phil did the first dive and I did the other 3. Dr. McGinnis was searching for this, for the Eris and the Terror for a number of years, and then he researched and he found out that the Bredoalmond was up there, and he formed an expedition with Phil Newton and Can Dive, and we went up and we dove through 9 feet of ice and got into the bottom, and I was so happened to pick up the ship's wheel, bring it to the surface, and National Geographic made a big spread of it, and then they put me on the cover. Newt suit is a 1 atmosphere diving suit. It was built by Phil Newton from Can Dive. In 1983, when we did the Bredoalmond expedition, we had what they called the Wasp. The Wasp suit was a segmented joints, where with the Newt suit, Phil came up with designs on the shoulder and the elbow to make the ventilation a lot better. It was after the Bredoalmond dive, he said, I can build a better suit. He said, well, let's do it. And that's what he did. He came in and he built the Newt suit. In fact, they just built the third one, the 3rd generation now. It's a 2,000-foot suit. They're testing it right now over in Vietnam for submarine rescue.
Air and sea search is continuing for possible survivors of the Edmund Fitzgerald, a 729-foot ore carrier, which apparently broke apart and sunk last night on Lake Superior.
The Edmund Fitzgerald was a tanker, a lake tanker that went down just outside of Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, Ontario, I guess it was. What it was during the storm in November, it sank, taking down 29 crew members. Can Dive was approached by a company, and they wanted to raise the bell, the ship's of the Fitzgerald bell, and put a commemorative bell down with all 29 names of the people that died on it. So Can Dive was asked if they would do that, and Bruce Fiocco, our chief diver at the time, arranged to get the bell made. We went to Ontario. The Navy was doing exercise, and they had the Cormorant, which was a dive vessel for the Canadian Navy. They had one of the submarines on there called the Pisces boat, and we got on the Angling Lady, which was a tugboat. We went out to the site, and we commenced cutting the bell. Was on a tripod type stand. It had to be, to release it, we had to do some underwater burning, which was some of the first underwater burning that was ever done. But Bruce ended up cutting the bell, and when we cut the bell off, we raised it to the surface and we replaced it with the commemorative bell, and they had a ceremony over the wreck, and they rang the original bell 29 times for each member that perished on that tragedy.
The Abyss, for me, is a very interesting film. It probably was the most difficult thing that I really ever had to do, and I think collectively for the company to do, because we were many times breaking new ground. Jim Cameron was going to cut our visual effects right up against his wet-for-wet photography in South Carolina, which was being shot in a real tank with real submersible. So we were faced with actually imitating the look.
Cameron came to Can Dive looking for, talking to Phil and Jim English. He was looking for a submarine. We had a dome. It was a 5-inch thick plexiglass dome. So they came up with we'll make the suit work with this, and they designed it, and That was, in the movie, that was flatbed. They took the actors and they brought them, they got them certified in scuba. Then they got them in the hats and that, and running can dives, 2 subs with that. So I ended up on the movie set for about 6 months, I guess it was, in Gaffney, South Carolina. They filmed it in Carolina in an old nuclear plant. They filled the bowl up and cleaned the water up, and Jim Cameron was an incredible guy. He did all this, and it was the most underwater production that was ever done. We didn't use smoke and mirrors. We did the real thing.
They rose to the challenge instead of caving in under it. Nobody ever said I can't do that on this film, and I think they should all be proud of themselves for that.
You're coming along, you understand now what there's just only one piece of the picture. There's different parts of diving that can come into things. The technology with these cameras, and now just thinking of them being put underwater, using them underwater, taking pictures and sending them down with a motor on it. You can sit on the surface. You don't even have to go underwater now, but you can bring back some more, fantastic shots of It was a lot of fun in the suit. It's a different experience. It's like being a fighter pilot, but underwater.